Most parents expect their children will get a decent education in Australian schools, but for parents of kids with disabilities, that's often not the case. Today, a Senate committee report was released on the state of school education for these children. Dealing with public and private schools, it found the level of education delivered to kids with special needs is often woeful, well below what's possible with the right resources. The report calls for the federal government to commit more funding as a matter of urgency. Louise Milligan reports.
Adam, we'll go and get ready for the shop. We'll make a shopping list. Come with Mum and help Mum.
Mit was machen?
Good on you, buddy.
Nee, mehr.
Okay, we got to do a shopping list? Will you do the writing for me? Yeah, can you just write this?
Shopping.
Shopping, yeah.
Stephanie Gottlieb's son Adam is 16.
We need to get some Panadol for Joshy. So Panadol, P-A-N-A.
Adam has autism. Stephanie prefers to say he has higher needs. Whatever label she gives Adam, she, like thousands of parents of school-aged children across Australia, has no problems labelling herself a fighter.
It's typical of families where they have to fight and fight and fight for the most basic aspects of education to be provided to their child. Now, that's not okay. Okay, can you put, they're yours, aren't they?
Stephanie is Chief Executive of Children with Disability Australia, which made a submission to a Senate inquiry. The committee has investigated the adequacy of funding and teacher skills in delivering education to kids with disabilities in schools across the country. The committee delivered its report today.
As the chair of the committee, I've been really shocked at the evidence we've heard. We heard parents told us they went to ministers, to the Equal Opportunity, simply to get their child enrolled at the local school, which every other parent takes for granted. And the first thing those parents were hit with, once they said they had a child with disability, was the schools threw up their hands and said, we simply don't have the funding.
Harry Weinberg is 15. He has an extremely rare brain condition, olivopontocerebellar atrophy.
Which is a very long word that basically means that his cerebellum is underdeveloped.
Harry has bounced through the system, mainstream school, special school, dual enrolment in both. And his mother Melanie doesn't sugarcoat his experience, that in primary school the system failed him.
He was in grade 4 and he couldn't read.
So in the end it was a speech pathologist, not a teacher, who taught him to read?
Yep. And I know, it's
what
bizarre.
What does that say about the education of children with disabilities in this country?
Schools, yeah, it's unbelievable, and it's frightening to think that there is a culture that we label children at such an early age and almost put a limit on them and say they'll never read, they may never function independently, and that is just so wrong.
In his mainstream primary school, the school consistently complained that it lacked funding for a full-time aide. But Melanie believes it was more about an attitude than money.
And we said, okay, will you tell us what you're going to do? How are you going to modify the curriculum? How are you going to include him in the social aspect of the school? And they couldn't tell us. They just said, we need an aide. And so that was that was pivotal for me at that time, because I thought, well, no, it's not about the money. This is about you saying, I just need an extra resource so that you can deal with him and I can get on teaching the rest of the class.
Put him in a corner.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to a matter of sometimes money, but also an understanding of what it is that we're trying to do. And if it's inclusive education, what does that really look like? Because inclusive can mean kids are enrolled, but if they're doing a separate program and they're doing something where they're isolated within that setting, they're not really included at all.
60.
70.
Harry was pushed into a special school, but his experience there was much worse.
We had no homework coming home. Anytime we put in queries, they never got returned. Yep. We found it quite difficult to deal with people in a special setting because they seemed to be running their own show without any sense of accountability.
So low expectations.
Very low expectations of the children and no parent input allowed.
Shannon Walker, a new mum herself, has first-hand experience at the coalface of trying to cater for other people's kids with disabilities. Until her position was made redundant by the last Victorian government, Shannon worked with principals and teachers on accessing disability funding and adapting their teaching methods to reach children with special needs. She found a system in crisis.
They've tried to support students who were struggling in big classrooms, often classrooms with 25, 26, 27 children in them, and where there were children who had additional needs. Schools were struggling to meet their needs. They wanted to, they had, knew the expectation was there, but they didn't have the skills and the resources to really meet the needs, and they felt like they were letting the children down.
Stephanie Gottlieb says accordingly, children with conditions like autism or ADHD are often treated as naughty because teachers aren't educated about how to manage their behaviour.
I was working with a young boy last year and he was 7 and he'd been suspended for about 15 times for huge periods of time and had, been to school about 2 days in the last 3 months. A 7-year-old? Like, what is going on?
Raising the amount of teacher training on managing students with disabilities is one of the key recommendations of today's Senate committee report. Currently, student teachers often only receive 2 weeks of compulsory training and enter the classroom with no idea how to cope with complex behaviour. The committee also raised the issue of resources, demanding funding for all students with disabilities based on their needs. Last year, the Commonwealth Government promised to increase that funding this year after 5 years of comprehensive data from all the states and territories was completed.
And I will be holding them to that, so that every child in Australia with a disability will be able to receive the correct loading, as they should, to match their disability.
But the new Education Minister told 7:30 in a statement the deadline was missed after some states questioned the data's accuracy. The committee has recommended its release as a matter of urgency so the funding can roll out. The Teachers' Union agrees.
That around 270,000 students are currently not receiving the funding that they need. That was a promise that was made to families and students and educators right across Australia, and it's a promise that we believe the federal government needs to commit to.
We don't just need another set of recommendations that sits on a shelf. We need them to be actioned and there need to be very clear timeframes.
Harry Weinberg is now at a mainstream secondary school that he loves, which is supporting him well. His mother's desperately hoping that at the next assessment at the end of this year, the school will not tell him they can no longer meet his needs.
Most of these kids have the same hopes, the same dreams, they want friends, they just need the supports to be able to do it.
Louise Milligan reports.